Okay, we got a lot of lightning talks here, so get your keisters in your seat, and we'll get going. I've been talking a lot, my voice is a little sore, and we have someone here who can probably do a much better job of moderating the lightning talks than I can. So I'm going to turn this show over to Bosco So. Bosco has been running the San Francisco Ruby meetup for years, and 3 years now. And he's going to manage our lightning talks here. We got 13, 14, 15 people, something like that.
We got 13.
We're going to go Zoom. Here we go.
So, can you hear me? Excellent. I'm Bosco, as Josh mentioned. And the only thing I'm going to say is I organize the San Francisco Ruby meetup, and that's primarily you guys. And that means presentations come from you, venues a lot of times come from you, and what makes it a success comes from you. So email me when you have. We got talks scheduled for May 13th, for Wednesday, and June 10th. That's all scheduled in. Need venues, need talks, and then you'll be the boss. All right, we got 13 talks. I'm going to time you guys on 5 minutes each, and give you a 1 minute warning when and pull you off the stage. All right, first on the stage is Jeff Smith of Blather.
So I wrote a library called Blather that's basically simpler XMPP. A little while ago, I wanted to get into XMPP development, and so I started going through some of the tutorials and things that people have up. And as great as the Peepco screencast is, and as full-featured as XMPP for R is, it's really complicated. So I wanted to kind of dumb that down just for myself, and I figured other people might appreciate it too. So you can find it on GitHub. You can find me as SPR Squish just about anywhere you look. It requires libxml and event machine. I don't think well in threads, so I use the event machine reactor pattern, and it should be pretty fast. And then libxml, also pretty fast. I started using GoGaRuCo, but it seems to be missing namespaces, or maybe not. Somebody school me on that, because I'm missing something. As a really simple DSL, this is basically an echo example. It'll approve any subscription request it gets in. It'll exit when it sees when you send it exit, and otherwise it'll just send back whatever you send it. So the way that the DSL works is that there are little handlers, and the handler is basically the type of stanza that you're looking for. So the subscription stanza, message stanza, and it goes all the way down through a hierarchy of stanzas. Right now, these are the only ones supported. So the way that it's going to work is that if you if you receive like a disco info stanza, but you're only handling IQ stanzas, that block will handle that stanza. So it'll sort of like the DOM tree, it'll bubble up through the tree, through the hierarchy. You may have seen these little guys attached to it, and they're guards, sort of like Erlang. I'm like looking into Erlang, and I figured, well, that's a message language, and it does some messaging really well, and guards seem to be a really interesting idea. And I started with like writing a bunch of ifs in my handlers, and realized that that's kind of ridiculous. Like, why not make it really simple and really easy? So you have guards, and guards basically work by calling, like if it's a symbol, it'll call that method on the stanza, and if it returns true or non-nil or non-false, it'll accept it. Hashes with strings do an equivalency test. Hashes with regexes do a match test. Lambdas work like you would expect a lambda to work, and then you can use arrays to act as ors. Otherwise, it'll act as ands. So I don't know. So anything inside of an array will act as an or. And that's the real quick overview of Blather. Go ahead and check it out on GitHub. Contribute to it. It hasn't been built out a lot, and I don't have a lot of real-world use for it, so I need other people to kind of help me figure out what else to do with it. Thanks.
Well, you got a minute for questions. You want to take some? Are there any questions? Oh, you said it.
Yeah, I got any questions. One you
said colon body without a hash thing. Does that mean to be a hash thing into the regex matching thing? Is that a typo? It will.
There's colon body without a hash. It'll just look just like sometimes a message stanza won't have a body. Maybe that's not right, but it'll basically. What's that?
That was the one that said you said and then the message box. It looked like it was matching at the end.
Right. It'll match. Right. It'll match to see that there's a body in the message, and as long as there's a body in the message, it'll send it back. If there's nothing, like what was the example? Activity stanzas that say whether you're typing or not don't have a message body, so it won't match on that, and it won't try and send that back. Anything else? Yes, that's next. So he asked if PubSub is in the works, and yes, it's next. Anything else? Thanks.
Okay, next up is Tim Connor, and he will be talking about rack middleware.
Okay, I saw, oh crap, is that legible at all? I saw Rack Flash earlier yesterday, and it needed Sinatra, and I hacked it to not use Sinatra, and in the process I realized I built a couple of middlewares without really understanding the build init call cycle. So I wondered, why do we always say app initialize when we're building an app, and reference it to app and call, and how exactly does that work? It's pretty simple. Every time you do, if you have an example rack app and you do use run, every time it calls use, it's actually building a lambda that references the class so it can instantiate it later and pushes it into this array basically. And then the run doesn't have the lambda because it doesn't call new on it. And the end result of this is it actually goes one direction. Sorry, let's see. It needs to go down this direction as it reads through the file, but when it gets to the end, it needs to call back with the app up so that it, as you'll see in the call cycle, it knows how to call its next in the chain. So if you actually run this, you will see it uses, it hits the bottom, and then the lambda calls back up through the chain it's built, through a to app, and injects it. So the gist of this is, every time you say a use, you're creating a lambda that will later have new called on it for your class, and then it'll call it backwards to create an app reference, which doesn't really matter generally, but if you do funky things like hack the builder in ways Yehuda hates, you can get access to the builder in your middleware, and I'm going to take this code out, but it's in there right now, and do things such as get access to the builder, find the end of the builder, open the class, and include a convenience method. Or if you hack it further, this code is available on Timocratic/rackflash. You can do things such as get access to the builder, get its chain of middleware, check if any of them are rack session, and raise an error if not. So right now as it stands, you can't get full access to the full chain of the middleware. I think it'd be kind of useful in rack, but it would enable some ugly stuff. So if I can figure out a way to do it that Yehuda doesn't hate, maybe I'll submit a patch, but that's the gist. You all know how rack is call chained through the end, gets passed back up through this app chain. It's sort of odd that you build down one way your file, it instantiates inits back up, and then from the top of it you pass your end back down through, so that every middleware calls this app reference it gets in the building process with its modified app and passes it back through. So it's sort of a triplicate up, down, up, which was a little odd at first when I was trying to build a middleware. That's that. Questions? Straightforward, I guess.
Okay, next up is Wolfram Arnold, and he's going to be talking about what's so cool about cash money.
Okay, guess enough. Cash money. My name is Wolfram Arnold, but I didn't write cash money. A certain Nick Callan wrote it, and you all heard him last night giving a talk about magical scaling sprinkles. I think cash money is a brilliant invention that Nick came up with and had many collaborators helping him with, and it came out of the Twitter core, I understand, and it's written in Ruby. And cash money lets you do something that I find is the next evolution of caching technology that is more transparent than traditional methods. Namely, you can do a user find at the bottom here as opposed to a user.get cache. The top method is the more explicit, sort of older style way of doing it, and it's more manual in some way. And as technology evolves, people get more comfortable with the technology. We always find that it gets more abstracted, more encapsulated. And so now you can just use the regular user.find, and the cache money will abstract away the fact that actually there's a cache in between you and the database. And some other methods that are supported in here are things like user.find with an ID in the top. It can do conditions also. It's got a clever parser in it. You can do counts. You can even do a find by name if you index the name field. So cache money has a directive at the model layer where you can specify which indices it should keep in memory. And at the very bottom, it intercepts creation and updates to model instances so that the index in memory gets updated through after save and then after create filters. And everything is in memory once the cache has been primed once and you do read and write operations. A couple other things you can do with it, which is very cool, are named scope and has many and friends will all work. They will all automatically go to the cache. If you have a class user with many messages on it, and you have a class message which indexes the sender and receiver IDs, then you can call user.messages.find with the conditions of one of the indexed fields, and this will go to the cache. So this is the standard out-of-the-box, Rails 101 syntax, and it's now cached, which I find an amazing thing, and it's just great that Nick came up with this, and it'll facilitate a lot of Rails caching. If your applications are written without many custom finders and with named scopes and the way it should be done by convention, then you might get away with cache money as a drop-in replacement. I haven't seen that in practice, but it's getting closer. Part of my business is Rails consulting, so if you haven't done it that way, you can hire me to fix it for you. Another thing you can do about it is something I wrote. It's called Acts as Most Popular. Cache money doesn't support joins, because joins, as we heard, are difficult. You can go to Hypertable or CouchDB for solutions that don't need joins either. And so I came up with a small way of doing a join for a very narrow application that is popularity ranking. If you have most commented articles, for example, and you want to sort those by popularity, by most comment count, then you can use this plugin, which will build on top of cache money and keep the additional index in memory as well. Thank you so much. You can hear more about this at the Ruby meetup on May 13th. I'll be speaking again about cache money and friends. Any more questions? May 13th. Bosco's. San Francisco. Thank you. What else would be? Please.
Is it just a regular class that gets blessed at the end of every class anyway? Or?
No, sorry, this is backed on memcached. Yeah, sorry about that. Has anybody used it? 2%, okay, cool. Yeah, try it out. It's really, if you're currently doing caching through custom memcached or get cache or type stuff like that, try it because your code becomes a lot more maintainable and easier to read. Anything else? Great, thank you.
So next up on the list is a relatively unknown programmer by the name of Yehuda Katz. And he's going to be talking about Moneta. Just kidding. Yehuda?
So the idea behind Moneta is, let me just pull it up real quick. Am I on there? Sweet. So the idea behind Moneta is to be able to have objects that behave, look, smell, and feel like hashes, Ruby hashes, but are actually back-ended by anything. So the basic, if you look at the basic Moneta core, this expires. If you look at, for instance, SDBM, which is just like a older version of BerkeleyDB, this is the adapter for Moneta for SDBM, and so you have to implement reads, slice equals, fetch, store, and delete. And you can optionally also supply an expiration object that will also handle expiration. So the basic idea is that if you just want it to be like a hash, that's fine. If you also want to support expiration, you can another object that responds to hash read, hash write, and delete. And that is what Moneta will internally use to store the expiration information. So if you have a bunch of keys in your hash and you also want to support expiration, each one of those keys will go into the secondary hash with an expiration date, and before reading from the main hash, it'll check to see if you're expired. But instead of just storing it in a hash, you can store it however you want. So for instance, the file adapter uses xadder, which is just Unix extended attributes to store the expiration. And in order to make the expiration work, there's just a little expiration class here that says read means get the xadders, write means set the xadders, and delete means remove it. And then all you do is you set an expiration object, which is a new copy of whatever expiration, and you include expires, and that automatically adds expiration to whatever Moneta adapter you want. The fact that it's so easy has caused us to have BerkeleyDB, Datamapper, File, Memcache, Memory, Redis, Tokyo Cabinet, Tokyo Tyrant, S3, SDBM, and xadder adapters. About half of those were written by me. About half of those were randomly contributed via pull requests. Another reason that it's so easy, and this is just something that if you're going to make an adapter thing, I would encourage you to do, is that I wrote a shared spec, which is basically how should a read my Moneta cache work. It reads from, let me make this a little bigger. It reads from keys, so basically goes through, and when I first wrote this, I just tested it on a regular hash because the idea was to make the behavior work exactly like a regular hash. And then just adding a little, using rspec, describe whatever adapter, set up the adapter as a cache instance variable, clear it, and then it should behave like a read-write Moneta cache. So, like I said, about 5 of these adapters were contributed, and it's simply a matter of writing one of these, running the specs until they pass, and then sending a pull request, and yep, it all works. The main use case that I'm looking at is if, let's say, you have, let's say, Rails or Merv or Sinatra cache. Instead of just saying you have to use memcache, and if you want to use something else, you have to write a special Rails caching thing. You could just say you have to use a thing that behaves like a hash, and you can swap it out, and then people can just swap them out for any Moneta adapter. So that's the idea, and pretty much any use case like that. Okay, that's all.
Where does the name come from?
Look it up on Wikipedia. It's a Greek or Roman god or goddess of memory. Figure it out. I think it's a Roman goddess of memory.
Okay, are you all set, Andy? Yes. Okay, so this is Andy talking about Datamapper, and next up will be Mishlav. I just want to say, actually, for those who have just presented and for those who are about to present, please Twitter your URLs or your slides to hashtag GoGaRuCo so that people in the audience can pick up all the info. So take it away, Andy.
All right, my name is Andy. I work for Engineered. I'm going to talk a little bit about Datamapper adapters. Mostly I'm just going to talk about what's in the next version of Datamapper, 0.10, the DMNext branch, because they've made making really simple adapters a lot easier. So to start with, this is the current in-memory adapter for Datamapper 0.9, and the main method that I'm going to highlight here is the read method. It goes through, it does a bunch of things, it sorts all this stuff based on, it's doing it all in Ruby. So there's nothing special that's happening in this adapter specifically for in-memory, it's just doing it in Ruby. And you'll notice down here there's to do sort and limit. It can't actually do those right now. So the after version I guess there's a few other things here. The other thing is that you're returning special data mapper objects here. So when you do read many, you're returning this collection object. It's a data mapper collection. The regular read, you're returning data mapper objects as well. So the new version, all you do is you return an array of hashes. There is this filter records method here that does all of the magic in Ruby for you, so you don't have to do any of it, so you don't have to rewrite it. So if you're not doing anything that's not dealing with SQL or something where you're going to actually be able to sort, limit, or filter in your adapter itself, you can just call directly into this filter records command. So it makes it a lot simpler if you're doing something really simple. So what I did today for this is I wrote a really simple adapter to talk to GitHub repositories, and the cool part is that you can then connect it to another data mapper repository that's not in. So yeah, you can talk across repositories, which is kind of the power of data mapper. So this is basically what the models look like. I have an account, which is just a regular in-memory repository. This could be a database. You have a name, and then you have it has many repos. I don't know if you've seen data mapper before. It should be pretty regular. You have to tell what repository you're talking to, and then the child key because they hash. And then repo, another regular data mapper adapter. You just tell it which repository to use, and then some properties that will pull out. The adapter itself is pretty simple. I just use HTTP party to pull in the list of repositories by account name. I patched data mapper query to make it a little simpler. I only implemented read for now. Basically just grabs the owner out of the query and fetches the records and returns them with that same filter records command. So really super simple. And just to show you, I set up the GitHub repo adapter based on the GitHub repo, and the default is an in-memory adapter. So I have it running here. It's okay, so you include repos. Take a second. For 6 of them, you can do first. So basically, you can search across all the repos. You get all the filtering for free. I could do all of them. Just get the first one. So you just get all that stuff for free with that filter records command. So I mean, this took me about half an hour to write. It's pretty cool. And so another cool thing that we could do is this is kind of the future. This can't be done right now, but so this adapter is very specifically for data mapper repositories or GitHub repositories. You can't really use it for anything else. It's not a generic adapter. And so I was talking to Paul Saduskas, the guy that did the refactoring, and this is the idea that we will hopefully get to in the future. So inside of your actual model, you can have the adapter class that does all the CRUD operations, and then you just tell it what repository to use here with your adapter. So just inside of your model, you say, I'm using this adapter, here's my CRUD methods. Just do it automatically. So, any questions?
Great. Hi. My name is Eric Michaels Ober, and I'm an engineer and architect at a company called Top Fans right here in San Francisco. We're launching our flagship product on this Monday, and it's a MERB application. Go MERB. And we use Data Mapper. And one of the things we wanted was the ability for people who don't know SQL to edit records in the database, add records to the database. It's a very content-intensive application, content-driven application, and it's crowdsourced, so there's a lot of shitty content, spam, things we want to make small tweaks to or big tweaks to, and we don't want an engineer to get involved every time that needs to happen. So this is a solved problem, no sort of rocket science or anything revolutionary here in the PHP world. There's PHP MyAdmin, in the Rails world, there's a couple of different solutions, Active, Scaffold, and a couple others. But for MERB and Data Mapper, there's actually nothing great that I could find, at least. So I made my own, and I'm happy to share it with any of you if you like what you see. It's modeled after the Django site admin, which is really, really nice. And so basically what I did is I stole all their CSS and JS and just copied it into my MERB app and wrote a MERB generator that that generates the scaffolding for you. So the one sort of question is, why wouldn't I just do it in Python and sort of rewrite all the models in Python and then just use the Django admin? And it's just a pain in the ass, right? Because you have to keep 2 copies of your models, and especially this early stage in our development before we even launch, and we're adding features all the time. Our data models are changing all the time, so it sucked to have to change them in Ruby code, writing data mapper models, as well as in Python and Django. So if you haven't seen the Django admin app, it looks like this. So you can see this is Python running on port 8000, and this is the Django admin app. It has a lot of nice features, like these filters, and searching, and pagination, and sorting on the columns, and pretty much everything you'd want in an admin app. And what's cool is it sort of introspects on your data model. And so if something's like a Boolean, it displays it as a checkbox. If it's a one-to-many or many-to-many, you can do stuff like this. And it just has a lot of really nice features that we also wanted. So now let me switch over and create a new tab. And so this is a MERB app. It's a real MERB app. It's an admin app. One thing you'll notice is that if you look in app models, there's nothing there. And the reason for that is that we've actually carved out our models as a MERB slice. I don't know if you're all familiar with MERB slices, but they're just a way to sort of encapsulate small MERB applications. And they're usually just used for views and controllers, but it works perfectly well for models too. So our data model is just a slice, and then it's bundled as a gem. So our main application has a dependency on that gem, as well as the admin application. It just sort of sucks in the data models that way. So not only are there no models in app models in the admin app, but there's also no models in app models in the actual web app. So you just run bin merb, and that will start up on port 4000, hopefully. Great. And yeah, boom. Like it looks, hopefully, yeah, hopefully exactly the same. Yeah, so you can do basically all the same stuff you do there. Has like the nice filters and stuff, and requires very little code. You can go in, edit users, add users, view the changes on the live site, which is like another really nice feature. And you can, like Pages is like a nice example of that sort of one-to-many thing. So you can take people and put them in categories. Like we needed a way to easily categorize thousands of users on our site. So we did that. And really quickly, I'm getting the thing that it's time, but just really quickly, there's a generator. So you can say merb gen, and you can see there's a new type of generator in here, an admin resource. And that'll basically go through, create all the controllers and views that you need every time you have a new data model that you want to add to your admin app. So it looks like there's not a lot of time, but if there's any questions, that would be great. If anyone wants this code, it's not up on GitHub yet, but if anyone wants it, I'm happy to share it. It's sort of weird because like I guess I would want to ask the Django guys permission before I put it up on GitHub, but I think it's licensed in a way that it's fair to use. And if you want to contact me, I'm sferic, E-R-I-K, on Twitter and on GitHub. And if you don't have a computer, my phone number is 415-312-2382. Questions? Quick? Is anyone interested in using this? Oh, great. What's that? Oh, Yehuda's saying he'd like to add it to MERB, so that is great. I hope you're really happy about that. Thanks.
Try not to break anything. Again.
Okay, for second try is Ms. Locke with the RSpecter for continuous tests on Mac OS X.
Wow. Works. You can see that? Okay, so I actually made some slides. I'm gonna play them. I'm gonna talk about a concept called auto tasks because it's not really for testing. Just it's very useful for testing. 90% of what I'm using it for is for testing, but it's not only for that. I'm gonna find more usages to it. So I've been to Pivotal Labs lately. Cool company. They had something like this, not exactly this, some kind of a poster like this on the screen, saying Mr. Proper Guy, and it said make it green, don't make it clean. It's development cycle process we all know. So you write code, you write test first, and then you make it green, and then after that you refactor. So that's red-green refactor test cycle, and it's very for me, I'm really lazy. I don't like to run tests all the time, so I like auto tests a lot, and I used to like it. Problems with hoping everyone knows what auto test is. Problem is auto test is it's not easily maintainable. It's one big file, hard to understand. It has really awkward crawl integration. That's kind of a plugin for auto test, and it has very poorly designed this discovery system that RSpec and RSpec Rails plugins plug into. The worst problem of them all is polling, so it really polls all your files. And I don't know about you, but I have a MacBook Pro, and I don't like it that the process is consuming this much while it's idle. So this is idling, right? So Firefox can do this, but not Autotest. So RSpecter is something I found, just by reading the blog buzz around new stuff for testing in Ruby, and written by Andreas Wolf. It's fairly old. It's older than a year, and it uses file system events on OS X. So it uses RubyCoCo. So we've been hearing about RubyCoCo yesterday. And file system events is what you expect it to be. It's an event that triggers when you change a file. It was a console tool. It's made for RSpec and Growl integration. It's relatively clean, but you couldn't take it and do something with it that it was not designed for. It didn't have any tests or anything. So it soon was abandoned by the original author to make a GUI application in Coco. Now it's a pretty nice one. When I tried it, it wasn't so nice. It spammed you with too much Growl notifications. Now it's a pretty nice one, but I want the console tool back, so I really want it. So, yeah. So what you do when you want something that the original maintainer doesn't want to do anymore. So I forked it, cleaned it up a bit. Make it more modular. Whoever wants to use each part can use it, and I'm also using this modularity to make something this morning that I'm going to talk about at the end. And pretty nice mappings it has. I mean, you all put your library files in /lib, and you put your specs in spec or tests in test, right? So if there's a lib/foo.rb, its test is going to be test/foo_test.rb. So everyone uses that, so it understands it. And much better mappings you get if it's a Rails project. It understands it much better more. And it got specs, right? So it's tested. And it's so modular, you can take out the listener. 1 minute. You can take out the listener
and just use it to set up a handler. This block with change files is going to get invoked whenever a file is changed on a directory that is indicated in the last line. So it's easy as this if you want to use it. So RSpectre uses it to make something like this. So I go to RSpec and run it. So this is what you've seen if you ever tried RSpectre before. I've got this little Unicode signs here, and down there was a growl integration. So if I go and change any of the files, break the build, if you can see the bottom, the build is broken. It's pretty fast. Uses only a couple of % of CPU, 1 or 2 or something like that, and it's pretty nice tool for developing actually an application, not just Rails one. And but this is what you had earlier, right? So I'm kind of taking this approach further. I'm taking this approach further by exploring all the possibilities. So it's not only tests, right? You can use any automatically running task after you change a file. So it can be compiling YAML sass, it can be trigger JavaScript rockets, it could be rendering RDoc output, right? So I'm the author of the HANA template for RDoc. Most people I've met think it's the best template for RDoc, and I'm actually using RSpec while building it. It automatically builds the template for me while I develop on it. So it automatically also builds Rails documentation while I edit it. So I'm going to build that in. And the last thing is I don't want to start RSpectre in my project. So I don't want to start it for each project. So I made a system-wide RSpectre. So the system-wide RSpectre, this is only 30 seconds more, is I started, it listens to everything. It listens to everything in my home directory. I can just forget about it. So I'm a core Rails core developer, contributor. I'm not a developer. I go to Rails, and this is actually what we hacked on yesterday. I break it, and it breaks. So you can see the thing here. This is calculations. This is active record stuff. So I just changed the file. I'm going to change it back. I'm saving it right now. Let's count the seconds until you get the feedback right there. So you go from project to project and you test your own stuff. You have to opt in for every project, put the file in there indicating I want tests to run for this. And when you opted in, you can forget about it. You can define your own mappings. I've done this just today, and I'm going to continue working on it. So watch it on GitHub, please. Watch it. Thank you.
So don't forget to add your URL to, or Twitter your URL to hashtag GoGaRuCo. Okay. All right, next up is Brian. And after Brian is Pat Nagajima. Right now, Brian's going to be talking about Rackbug.
Okay. All right. So just if you guys aren't sick of hearing from me yet, maybe you will be by the time this is done. Just a quick Rack middleware that I created called Rackbug. And this is heavily inspired by the Django debug toolbar, which was a project created and maintained by Rob Hudson. So I'm very thankful for him and the groundwork that he's laid. In fact, we borrowed a lot of styles from them, for example. So it's modular so that anyone can write a panel that plugs into this. It works with any Rack app. So you can use it from MERB, you can use it from Rails, or an app that's a composite of those. And whatever panels make sense, you can use in your environment. So just going to run through the panels real quick to give you an idea what it supports. This one's not that interesting. That's your Rails environment and version numbers. This is your response time in Rails for the request, along with a breakdown by user CPU, system CPU, total, the kind of stuff that Nick was talking about yesterday. All the request variables, session and cookies, the full Rack environment. Now we're getting into a little bit of the more interesting stuff. It keeps track of all of your SQL queries. In addition to that, this doesn't work so great on such a small resolution, but it will show the backtrace of where the query was executed from,
and you can, in fact, just click to generate and explain on that specific query after the fact. So in addition to being reporting, it also has some interactivity. You can also run the query and also use the MySQL's query profile feature. This panel is the count of all the active record instantiations you've done on your page. We found this interesting because we found we had a lot of pages where we were instantiating a lot more active record objects than we expected, and this caused our processes to grow really quickly. So my coworker Noah Davis wrote this tool called Oink, which actually instruments that, and this builds on that to provide it in a web interface, so you can see it easily. This is our memcache usage. You can see get your cache hit ratio, look at the total time spent talking to the cache, that kind of thing. Additionally, if you've got like HTML or something in your cache, you can click View on it. This is going to take a second here for this to update. And you can actually look in the cache and see the contents of the cache using the toolbar. Also, for debugging some issues or perhaps clearing out bad data, you can delete a cache key live from RackBug, and it will just send the appropriate delete to the memcache server. It's got template traces, so you can see the exclusive and total times for each of the layers of your rendering. This is really useful to us because we do most of our real work during the rendering only if the fragment cache is missed, so we need to know which template on a page that's complicated was slow. It also aggregates all of the Rails log entries just by instrumenting that. Finally, the last thing on here is the number of kilobyte delta between the process size for Ruby between when you started that request and when you finished. So we've actually seen, like, if we did something wrong in the request, it might grow 50 megabytes during that single request. And this will capture that and show it to you. It'll also show you a running total of the KB of the Ruby process. So that's RackBug. It's on GitHub. We're going to add more panels to it. We're also interested in people who want to add panels to it. Like the template panel doesn't work with MERB yet, but it should. Also, like if you want to think of like how is it useful to me to be able to do a panel, well, a good answer is like we're thinking of adding Redis to our application. And if we add Redis to our application, we're going to want a panel which shows us our Redis network operations, how fast they executed, and what their results were. So we're actually, one final thing. The intent of this is to be a very valuable diagnostic tool for your production environment. So we run RackBug on our production servers. It's restricted by IP address and password. And so anytime we want to see what's going on, we flip it on with a bookmarklet, and we get the toolbar on production. We can look at what's going on live on the server as it's happening. That's RackBug. Do I have time for a question? All right, questions? Anyone? All right. Oh, yes? Yeah, so that's a very good question. So basically, most of it is alias method chain hackery of the kind of thing that 5runs and New Relic and all these other Scout, all these other performance tools are forced to do to get this information extracted from Rails. The goal is, and I started working with Yehuda Katz on this project, like all projects, go back to Yehuda Katz. I started working with Yehuda to create this small library and API called Orchestra, which is a way for a framework to expose a stream of performance information without caring who's subscribing to it. So it's sort of like an observer pattern. So then Rails can just add an Orchestra line saying, hey, I'm about to render a template. I just finished rendering a SQL query. And New Relic, Scout, RackBug, all of those people who care about performance data and want to build their own tools around reporting on it can do that without having to couple to the APIs. So we're trying to get buy-in from this from a lot of framework authors, but that's Orchestra's role. It doesn't use that yet, but that's where we want to go. It's a very good question. Thank you.
So I think we need to institute a holy shit award for lightning talks. Well, okay, next up is Pat. And after Pat is Chris Lee.
So hi, I'm Pat Nakajima. It's a weird formatting. I am a Ruby programmer from New York City, and I like to go to the NYCRB meetings. A bunch of fine people there, and sometimes I like to speak. And when I was doing this one time, I didn't want to have to go to Keynote because I think Keynote is a smell, and we can do better than that. So I wanted to do my slides in Markdown, and so, there's Markdown libraries out there. But I also wanted syntax highlighting, and that's all I wanted, really. So I created this library called Slide Down, and it lets you write slides that look like this. Can you see that? So yeah, you basically create slides that look like this, where every single slide is limited by this capital slide with the exclamation point. Any words that come after that are class names added to each slide element, because it all generates HTML. And then if you have the Lighthouse-esque language name, it'll syntax highlight for you. So let me just see if this works. Also, like, right up until I walked up here, I was refactoring things and changing things around because apparently it broke in a version of GoGaRuCo recently. So if this doesn't work, sorry. Slide down. So basically, you call slide down from here, and we can just pipe it into slides.html, and then it opens slides.html. Also, I spent a lot of time trying to write content, but then I realized, well, I wanted to spend a lot of time writing content. I ended up just playing with colors and JavaScript. So you can see here, we can go left and right with those keys. This is okay, so it didn't really work out as well as it should have, but that's probably because I've been messing around too much with CSS. You can do stuff like this, which is awesome. Awesome, right? Seriously, folks, this is Keynote to me. So, and this is Markdown. There's a couple other things really quickly. In this directory here, you can see I have the slides.markdown file. I also have a hatness.css, which I called that because I haven't had much sleep recently, and awesome.js, which is what handles all those animations. And so basically, any CSS or JavaScript files that are in the same directory as your Markdown file are just going to get stuck in there too, so you can kind of override it. I think that's pretty much it. It's all on the GitHub. Also, one more thing, I'm sorry. Because the syntax highlighting thing with Markdown is cool, so I also extracted that into a library called MakersMark, and that's all it does, is syntax highlights Markdown. And they're both on the GitHub. It is github.com/Nakajima, and you can find them on there. Thank you.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Chris Lee. I work at a company called Squeegee, and I'm going to talk about an application we built called Floxy. So not everything will end in double E, but those three things do. We're a little Rails consultancy firm out of Texas. We're in Houston, Dallas, and Austin. And Floxy is a Twitter directory, open source Twitter directory application that we built, and we're looking for kind of feedback and people to help out, especially to write tests. So if you're like that. Little background, we did a little application called Tweet Congress, which gained a little bit of notoriety among the political circles, and all it is actually is a directory for congressmen, and some of our founders of the company are really into politics, so they built this really out of self-interest. But it really caught on, and during especially the State of the Nation address, we basically took the site down. We had a large Amazon EC2 instance, and it took the site down, and we had to provision a couple more instances just to keep it up. So we thought maybe there might be a demand for other types of Twitter directories. So we decided to create this application called Floxy it's a generic Twitter directory, and we open sourced it as a Rails plugin. So you can see here, basically very generically, it's some of our employees and Hayes Davis, who doesn't work at Squeegee, but he wrote GoGaRuCo, which is a Twitter API wrapper in Ruby, and so we decided to throw him in here as well. And as well, Michael Play, who wrote the Twitter auth. We depend on that a lot. So, and this is actually an implementation that we just threw up for our own particular company. So you can see it's just very simple with search and tweet streams and little Twitter directory that we open source. So again, you can get it on GitHub, and if you're willing to help on the project, we're looking for developers to either help us contribute to it or even just use it for your own projects. And there's instructions on the bottom. It's a Rails template that will guide you through installing it. So that's it. Yeah, go ahead.
I have two quick questions. First is the design sequence really good as part of
the blue ones were, yeah. Unfortunately, I unplugged this, but the blue ones that come by default is there, and it looks really good, yeah.
So this is great. My other question was with the process for adding people to the
There's a rate task you can modify to do that, or I think there's also a manual way to do it. So either way. So we actually have a rate task that just imports all our users, and then we sync it to a local database. So that when you, so if you have like 100, 200 users, you don't want to be calling the Twitter API every time. So we actually have a syncing mechanism to sync it to a local database, and then you can just page through your users very quickly and very easily. So.
Okay, our last presenter is Max, and Max has pulled a personal favor, and he asked for a double time. Well, he wanted 3x time, but I'm going to give him double time.
Well, I'll keep it short. I mean, if you guys, I'll try to be as fast as I can. I mean, this might be boring to some people, maybe not, but we'll see. This is where I work, so I'll plug it just a little bit. This is IBM Almaden Research in San Jose, so we call it like the spa in the mountains. I know Matt gave a great talk today on Pornstar. My stuff is PAMP, so I'm going to make you guys PAMP. Actually, IBM is in there, so it's got to be careful. So really, what it is an example of a technology that we're doing to enable privacy. And why Ruby? Well, because it's all built in Ruby. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. But why, privacy aware? So if you think about social networking, all of you here are on Facebook or MySpace or something, and none of you here, I can claim, can compare with the other person how private your data is. We have no idea. And you could be fiddling with all the settings, but you have no idea. So what we're trying to do is to provide a platform as a service that would make it easy for you to not only be able to compare, so have an index like a credit score on privacy, and then also leverage your network to actually help you on this. And of course, we are making some assumptions, that the user owns their data, they can actually change it, and then also that the system will always help you towards more privacy. So this is kind of the overview of the system. You can see it sort of allow pluggable algorithms, and we have a privacy model. We share data and schema. We have a REST interface and so on. It's all built in Ruby on Rails, so we use Rails and Facebooker and so on. The data model is sort of like this. The key thing there is that we sort of assume that the social network where you're going to embed this is actually exposing a social graph so that we can actually know your friends and know the relationships that you have with them and so on, and then also that you can actually set visibility on those things. So this is kind of the math model behind it. I won't bore you with too much of it, but we try to make it generic so that we can map it to OpenSocial and MySpace and so on. The other thing I want to show you here is that we try to come up with a model that actually puts that data in a matrix, and then we compute the algorithms of score on the matrix. So, we did this with 4 people. It took us about 3 months, and I was sort of the coach and the experienced Ruby developer. So this is a quick demo of this thing, and then I'll show you a little bit more detail about it. So if you go, don't try it now because it's probably going to bring it down maybe if too many people go. So this is the app. You can click on. It's sort of like eBay. You can go and you post items, and we have pretty stuff and stuff. And you can see for instance, this guy is asking what the heck is this, and he blocked, for instance, the price of whatever he did here. And we have a few items and stuff. But what's cool is this, and actually we got some press out of that. And this is the score. So you can see right now that if I clicked on item, and I already clicked just so that we can move fast, I can change these settings, just like on Facebook. But the problem is, let's say this is for just one application, but if you have 100 applications, you have to manage these things, and then you don't know how to essentially, what part of data and so on that you want to do. So what we've done is giving you an index. So you can see that my current is about 50, and we're recommending me, the system is recommending me to go to 25. And all I have to do to change it is to click here, and it will change my settings. So in the
I mean, we can go try it yourself, but let me finish the presentation. So what is the risk? I mean, because that's sort of the key innovation there, right, is the ability to give you a risk. So what we did is to essentially, come up with a way to represent the risk based on sensitivity, visibility, group invariance, and fitness model. The fitness model is because we want to make sure that the mathematical model matches, real life. So we actually did a lot of surveys of people to find out, based on different age groups, what kind of data do they feel is very sensitive. So now I'll show you a little bit about this. So this is kind of how it works. We did a survey, we take all this data, and then we calculate a score. Based on the score, you can sort of change it. You can also, of course, do your own settings. And then we're using the score to actually either alarm you or, recommend you, and potentially also do more research so that we can see. Like, for instance, we found that, people in the US compared to Australia have very, very different privacy sensitivity. In Australia, they're a lot more ready to give out data. So this is, for instance, some of the results that we found as a cloud. Clearly, it's not because you don't care about you care about your mom's maiden name. It's because it's being used a lot for banks and for credit card and so on. So you can see kind of like the relationship of things. This is the math behind it. It's actually this is a very simple math, but it's basically a computation of the sensitivity with some visibility, and then figuring out. But actually, it doesn't work well. So what we did is we actually came up with an advanced approach. Although it works to some extent, what it doesn't do is that it doesn't take into account other users' changes. So what we did is we developed a whole theory based on IRT that actually helps it. So part of this is private. So what we're trying to do is to get some interest in the team of people that would be interested in looking at adding privacy to either their application on Facebook or certainly applications where you have other users and you have friendship relationships. So you need that much. And then potentially we will make that piece, if there's enough interest, on GitHub so that people can start using it. So we have it pretty much packaged as a gem. It's just not released at this point. So if you're interested, contact me, and then we can certainly try to get you involved. We are working to get this into open social as well. And this is the credit for the pimp photo. That's all. Any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Oh, you're good. All right. We're done. So let me just finish up. Thank you, all you presenters, all the presenters. And if you will Twitter your URL with the hashtag GoGaRuCo so everyone else can get it, that would be great.
If you have a GitHub repository for your project, you can email me, josh@GoGaRuCo.com, and I'll hook it up on the GoGaRuCo account on GitHub.
And lastly, last plug for San Francisco Ruby Meetup. Do a search for San Francisco Ruby Meetup. Contact me from that page and volunteer to present. If you volunteer, you will get in. Okay. Thank you very much.